So I'm here to talk about cybersecurity in outer space. It's a bit of an introduction to the subject, as it's an up-and-coming industry which is getting spoken about more and more, so I wanted to highlight that to you and what's going on in this space, literally. If you're after some sophisticated slides, I haven't got that here, so you can leave exit now, that's absolutely fine. So, quick introduction, who am I? So that's me, obviously. I'm Amanda, also known as Millie, and I got that nickname from the Navy, and that was one of the nicer nicknames that I was given. I am a northerner, and I'm sorry, I will smile at you and say hi. It's just something that we do up there. And I know people down here don't tend to like that, but I'm friendly, honestly. I'm studying a degree in cybersecurity at the moment, and I'm planning on moving to do artificial intelligence in masters, and I'm then hopefully going to do a PhD in AI in outer space as well. And I'm currently training to be a security architect in the role that I'm doing. And the one thing that I do love is operational technology. I think it's an absolutely fascinating field, in a sense. And I love it more, the fact that a casino got hacked into by a fish tank thermometer, and I think that's absolutely crazy and amazing all at the same time. So there's my family to the left. As you can see, we're all crazy. And there's my lovely Princess Loki. She's just sounds crazy. But I will give a little tiny bit of a shameless plug. So I've started a podcast, and I hope that people will join it. And it's called Space Security, and it's what we talk about the what ifs. We delve down rabbit holes, and we're going to get guests on there. And it's brand new, and I am tweaking it because if you've ever heard your voice being listened back to you, it sounds terrible, and you can't Snapchat filter that away. So what are we talking about? I want to give a little bit of a learning lesson before I delve into space security, because there's no point me talking about space security. I have no idea what the hell I'm going on about. So, in the Earth, we have around about 5 different orbits. There are a couple more, but we have 5 main orbits. I'm going to be talking about the 3 main ones at the moment. Oh, sorry, gone too far. And the 5 main orbits, so we've got the LEO, which is this one here, that's a low Earth orbit. We've got the MEO, which is this one here, that's the middle Earth orbit. And the GEO, which is on the outside, which is a geostationary orbit. The other 2, you've got SSO, which is sun synchronicity orbit, which I can never say correctly anyway. And the GTO, which is geostationary or transmission orbits. So, like I said, I'm going to be talking about these 3 main ones, as these are the ones where our satellites that we use on a daily basis sit. So when we're talking about these 3, so the one in the centre here, which is closest to the Earth, the LEO, the satellites which are in there, it takes them about 90 minutes to 120 minutes to orbit the Earth. So they go around the Earth about 16 times a day. And those ones, you're going to get like high-resolution satellites, you'll have your scientific research satellites, anything that you need to grab data quickly from around the Earth. The MEO ones here, this is where you will typically find your GPS. So everything that you use for tracking, that sort of thing, they would sit in this sort of area. Then the outside one here, this is the mummy, in a sense. This is all your communications. Everything that you have switched on, your TV, your phone, and weather, anything that you need to look at, all that data, at the same time as while the Earth is rotating, that's where the satellites would sit. Because these satellites, even though they're moving thousands of miles an hour, they are slightly faster than our Earth rotating, so they get that kind of picture for us. So, space security. Now you get to hear me waffle on, and I bet you're really, really excited. See, I got let loose on PowerPoint. Look at all that. Right, so, it's amazing, isn't it, what you can do? Right, so imagine if you could see your data. So it's a bit of a blurry picture, but at the bottom here you have your city. All these lines here would be your data. If you could see it flying through the air, that's how busy it is. I probably reckon it'll be a bit busier, to be fair. But if you could see your data, your text messages flying across, your emails, your phone conversations, you'd want that encrypted, and you'd want that protecting. And that's ultimately what space security is. We're trying to protect those assets up the top, so then your data is staying protected. And we're relying on a lot of assets that are outside in space that are quite vulnerable, and there's good reasons for it. So At the moment, obviously, there was recently reports of Russia took down a satellite via missile, which was fantastic. But the main threat that we do have is jamming, and I'll talk about that a little more later on. Well, I didn't know that happened. Right, here we go. Right, let's go on to a few case studies. Right, so as you can see here, as all these start popping up, you can see what's going on in the world, and these are quite recent. So the ones where you go to the Ukraine sort of satellites that was being hacked, so that was the communications before they got invaded. So no one could track or no one could see that they were about to be invaded, which is obviously a massive thing. So this slide is going to look like I'm picking on Russia, but I'm not. They are honestly the only people that are doing stuff at the minute in space, and I'm struggling to find other case studies. But like this one at the bottom, Russia blew up a satellite, and that spells a massive, massive issue when it comes to space junk, because obviously all the debris that comes flying off those that's been obliterated, you have no control over that, and it could hit anything and everything. There are some good news. So, well, if you say that as a good news, the hackers have taken down Russia. But this is the most recent one that happened. As you can see, that was 14th of March that's been reported. So Russia jammed a signal which the RAF plane was flying from. I don't know how you stop this from doing these things. So the RAF plane was carrying an important person from Poland back to the UK, and the Russians jammed that satellite signal, so the plane was unable to determine its actual location. Luckily, they had obviously countermeasures for this sort of thing. However, it just goes to show, and it just highlights the fact that what can happen and how more in front hackers are, or threat actors are. They are one step ahead. They're looking at people, the movements and what they're doing, and seeing how much disruption they could cause just to cause an effect. And they're being very, very clever about it. Right, so what are we doing to combat these things? So it is being talked about more, which is very, very, obviously it's useful. Let me see where I'm going. Sorry. So we're highlighting the issues that were happening. We're people who have the power to change the regulations, to change the laws, are doing something about it. They are finally seeing that there is a need for cybersecurity in outer space. Because like I was saying earlier, at the moment we do have vulnerable satellites up in space, and that is purely down to, I'm not blaming the engineers, but I kind of am, but it's purely down to the engineers because they don't have a security mindset. They didn't back then. And also back then, if you can imagine, these satellites were up there for 10, 20 years. So the technology back then was completely different to what we have now. And there has been reports and studies to show that anything that's OT, which these satellites will be classed as OT, hackers are going through via the IT first. So the base stations need to put more mitigating factors in place and up-to-date security controls to mitigate against the ones that we can't actually patch. I mean, the other things that they are doing, so last year they launched a sandbox satellite for DEF CON over in America. So then I think there was about 5 teams, and they tried to hack that. And that gave everyone an example of what can be done to these sorts of satellites, and also how they can actually mitigate against any sort of threat. And also the ESA, they are actually putting in place a cybersecurity training academy, which they're launching this year as a pilot. So people are starting to talk, but whether it's quick enough for the threat actors, it's soon to be seen. So like I said, mindsets are changing, and we are starting to look at things with secure by design, which is amazing, and that's all what we're all doing and trying to achieve anyway. The things that we can mitigate against, obviously you've got your multi-factor authentication, which is a huge one. We have to put more security measures in place on the ground first. And it does all start with our IT when it comes to OT. They are trying to make aerials that will be put into satellites to prevent jamming, because jamming is one of the more difficult things to mitigate against. There's nothing at place, or they're trying to prevent that from happening, and hopefully we'll see some more more areas. But like I said, Starlink are doing stuff, so that's really, really good. Endpoint security is a massive one, and I know you go through all this with every single presentation, your cryptography, and it is the same stuff, but it's exactly the same even though it's in outer space. So why should you look up to the stars more? Well, it's cool, isn't it, really, looking up? Let's be honest. But we're all connected. We are literally all connected. Physically, communicationally, we are literally all connected, and even though we do have spy satellites flying around our heads every so often, we need it. We need it to help us. They're actually going to be putting satellite use on our mobiles, so then if you're in an emergency situation, you've no signal, you can utilise those signals. So you can understand what would happen if a hacker got into all this sort of stuff. We need it to track our airplanes. We need them to track our logistics. We need them to make a phone call. So if you can imagine that if satellites got taken down, we're going back to 1940s, and I don't think that was quite pleasant back then. So this is why it's so important, because we do utilise all these satellites day in and day out, and we do take them for granted. And I take them for granted. It's just one of those things that we do. But what you do have to remember, even though there is a lot of negatives to this in a sense, hackers need satellites too, so they're not just going to start taking everything down. And one of the other things is it takes a lot of resources to take down a satellite. The further away, the more resources it takes. So that's why you're probably going to get them to be state actors rather than your smaller ones, because then they're backed up with finances as well. But it is starting to make a shift into outer space, and I think it's something that we need to start thinking about a bit more. So what can we do? If you just start making that tiny linear adjustments, more in your personal life than work, and just start protecting yourself a tiny bit more, then I think that small little step is just it's helping on a wider scale and a wider picture. And then finally, whilst I've been waffling on for a while, and I appreciate you listening to me. Oh, going a bit too fast as well. The threat isn't just threat actors. Space junk is a massive growing concern, because like I was saying earlier, once that gets out, we have no control of it. At the minute in our space, in our orbit, there's about 9,500 active satellites, and they can range anything from really tiny box to massive. So the huge ones that you could traditionally think of in your brain when you think of a satellite, they're on the GEO, so they're outer ones. The smaller ones, the little CubeSats and things like that, they're more closer to home. But equally, these little things that are flying, we do need to protect them. And even though there are 9,500 approximately satellites that are active, there are 1,000 more that are not active up in the graveyard, which is a bit further out as well. And those, equally, if they have a signal, can potentially be hackable. So it is one of those tricky subjects at the minute, and there is a talk, and we're on the cusp of things changing. Whether it's going to be quick enough, we're soon to see, but it is a very, very, very interesting subject to get involved with. So if anybody would like to get in touch, please do via LinkedIn, and I'd love to have this conversation with you a bit more. Thank you very much.
So just 1 second, Amanda. I just wanted to see if anyone has a question. We've got 1 minute, just in case.
Ooh. Yeah,
I'll allow the floor a question if there's a burning question. Otherwise, you're going to be around, are you, in the break?
I'm here all day. Me to see Darwin.
Oh, actually, there is a question right at the back.
Hello.
Oh, there's a microphone as well. Thank you very much for an interesting presentation. Do you not think there's a real danger that we're starting to conflate jamming with cybersecurity in the satellite field? Particularly, I mean, GNSS is being jammed regularly in the Channel, North Sea by drug smugglers, and we're sort of approaching it as a holistic thing, whereas there are actually separate elements to this.
Yeah, I think it is a massive issue at the moment. I think one of the issues that we do see is obviously they're trying to get cybersecurity into the space industry, but a lot of cybersecurity people aren't swept in that industry. It might be similar when you come to OT devices, stuff like that, but like you say, when it comes to jamming, signal jamming and all that sort of stuff, it's a brand new era. And that's where you need to have your engineers and your cybers mashing together and working together as a massive team. But it is a very, very tricky area. Yeah, I totally agree.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for having me. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.